Hey everybody, it's Tanner Mulvihill. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all my loyal listeners out there. And if you have personally felt that this show has made a difference for you, please take a moment to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform you listen to the show on. It makes a big difference and helps spread the word. If you don't want to leave a review, but you wanted to let me know your thoughts, please shoot me a text. I'd love to hear from you. Your feedback is appreciated and it will help make the show even better. On this episode, I sat down with Kristen Boyd with Own Real Estate. Kristen shared with me the importance of impressing your clients throughout the transaction to generate positive word of mouth afterwards, finding common connections quickly to establish rapport, why you should be using Road Warrior the next time you do pop buys, and finally, tips to make sure you have a great past client event. And now, my interview with Kristen Boyd on the Virginia is for Realtors podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Virginia's for Realtors, now in our second season. I am pleased to be joined today by Kristen Boyd with Own Real Estate. Kristen, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am doing good, thanks. I was doing a little homework and I saw that you are quickly approaching your 5th year in real estate, so congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And also, you were a platinum recipient this last cycle with Hurrah down here in Hampton Roads. And what an accomplishment in your 5 years in business, and to kind of make that next level. So we'll get into all that in a moment, but I always just like to get a feel for, your backstory on what brought you into the business, what you were doing beforehand, all that good stuff. So let me just start there. Did you grow up in the Virginia Beach area or elsewhere?
No, I actually grew up in New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all over the place. But I married someone who was in the military, so we moved a lot. And while we were stationed in Hawaii and Guam, I did a little bit of property management type things, which made me realize that I really liked this field. And after I had my last child, I decided to get my license, and it took off really fast after that.
That's awesome. Now, you kind of moved to the area and you're moving around a lot and you get here. Now, did you have your license somewhere else too, or was it always in here?
No, I was never licensed anywhere else, just Virginia. So I studied for it while we were stationed in Guam. And then, funny story, I actually flew here I guess it was in July, to take my test, met with my realtor at the time, bought a house, got our offer accepted on a house, bought a new car, took my test and passed, all within 4 days, went back to Guam, got the family, and came back out 30 days later for our house to close. So,
oh my goodness. Now there is a lot riding on that trip. So you have to find a house, pass your test, and get the family moved out here. I mean, welcome to the life of a military spouse, but with the additional wrinkle of, okay, now you have to pass this test that it's not like you can turn around and take it tomorrow if that didn't, like, oh, I should have put C on that instead of P, right? So kudos to you for just organizational skills for sure. So did you have sales experience before or?
Not really. Like I said, I did some property management, but primarily I have my bachelor's degree in finance from Hawaii Pacific University. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Honestly, I thought that I would do mortgage loan financing. Mm-hmm. That's why I have my bachelor's degree. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll get some experience in real estate. Then my degree plus that would work out.
Yeah.
Obviously, that never happened.
You just found the passion for it. I can understand that. So you passed the test. Now, did you always know you were going to go with Own, or did you look around a little bit first, or how did that transition go for you?
No, I actually started with a RE/MAX brokerage, and I found this agent online that, don't want to give too many details because everyone will know who it is, but was really drawn to their personality. So I joined under them with the RE/MAX, but that RE/MAX ended up basically went out of business. So when that was all happening, I had worked with a lot of Own agents and I always had such a great experience with them.
Nice.
That I just knew that was where I wanted to go. And I also felt like they had a really great reputation in the community. Yeah. So I was with RE/MAX for the first 2 years, been with them ever since.
Okay. Very cool. When we come back, I want to talk about that first year in business for you because it's different for everybody. So we'll be right back with Kristen Boyd. Are you a realtor in the Fredericksburg area looking for a photographer you can depend on? Look no further than Jason Buttram Photography. Winner of the Freelance Star's Best of the Berg Award 4 years in a row, Jason is the real estate photographer of choice for many of the area's top agents, including several who have been featured right here on this podcast. Whether you are looking for standard photography, drone shots, 3D tours, floor plans, or even twilight photos, Jason and his team will bring out the beauty and character of your listing and have it back to you the next day. Booking an appointment is easy. Simply visit jasonbuttram.com. That's spelled Jason Buttram, BUTTRAM.com, or call or text him at 540-210-5518. Again, 540-210-5518. Make sure you tell him Tanner sent you. And now back to the show. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Kristen, let's talk about kind of your first year in business. You and the family have arrived, passed the test, and now it's like go time. How did it start for you? How did you go about telling everybody you're a realtor now? Because again, you're brand new here.
Right. And we had lived here before, so I did know a few people. But really, my brokerage had a lead generation program, and it was a lot of cold calling and things like that. We would get maybe 5-ish people a week to cold call. And I don't know, I just somehow did really well with that. I just was able to connect with people. So that was my first year. It was probably, I don't know, 20-ish transactions in the first year.
Okay.
And probably 80% of them were from that.
Wow.
And
okay.
That was just a really great start for me. And then after that, the next year it became maybe 70% referrals and 30% the lead generation program until now, where we're not doing any lead generation programs at all. And it's all referral based. It just kind of gradually got that way.
Makes sense. Now, for new agents that are listening, that everybody gets hit with, do the leads and follow up on the leads, what were some of the things that you found that were successful for you in getting them to meet with you to look at a house and kind of go down that road?
I really don't know if that's possible anymore. I think that people now, compared to 5 years ago, they don't answer cold calls. They don't give you the time of day. I know that when I get those calls, I just hang up on people. Whereas 5 years ago, I might have been more open to talking to them. So I really don't think that's worth the money that leads cost anymore.
Interesting. Okay.
But I mean, when you say what's the best way to start then? Because I really just don't know. I mean, it's a really tough time to start unless you have a referral base to start with.
Right. Well, the biggest thing now for newer agents, it seems like, is you got to be holding the open houses. Saturday might as well be your Tuesday, because where else are you going to have the opportunity to meet people actually walking in the door? You know, I think about open houses a lot of times where people are like, oh, they don't work, or they didn't work out for me, or whatever. Well, it's no different than an internet lead, right? So that internet lead person, they don't say on the forum, like, I am absolutely not working with a real estate agent already, right? They could have 10 agents for all we know. So It's no different on an open house. But for agents, I feel that's one of the things that they really have had to go back to old school doing, is like at open houses. How did you go about like spreading the word? Were you on Facebook pages to like, hey, I'm an agent here? How did you go about doing that part?
Yeah, I did that in the beginning, and it really did give me a lot of business in the beginning. I'm sure all realtors know that whenever there's a post like that, there's 100 responses within 10 minutes.
For sure.
And so it's just so saturated. That's not even worth responding to anymore for me. But in the beginning, I did get a lot of Facebook leads, I guess you could say, responses to messages like that.
It seems like the biggest thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you really got to be hitting the sphere of influence and figuring out how you're going to create your sphere of influence if you aren't necessarily somebody that's local. So
right.
What were some of the things that you benefited from once the turn happened, where it was no longer like 100% lead source versus like starting becoming more and more referral based? What were some of the things you were doing?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I still do open houses whenever I try to do at least one a week, sometimes 2 in one weekend, sometimes none for 3 weeks, but I try to do 1 per week average at least. I rarely get anything from it, but it's not like it's a huge pain. I mean, you bring your computer, you get some work done until someone comes in. So that's worth doing to me. But really, I think it's just treating your people well, because they will refer you. I mean, I have several people that refer clients to me that I wasn't even their realtor. They just knew someone that used me and that was really happy. And really, it just comes down to impressing everyone and taking good care of everyone. You know, of course, they'll want to tell their friends about it.
Tell me about kind of like your first deal. Like, what were some of the things you learned on the very first transaction you had? Was it like a purchase, or was it a sale, or?
Yeah, so it's funny. So every buyer that I've ever worked with came back to me to sell their house, except for my first sale. And I really feel like I messed that one up a lot because I didn't really have proper training at all. It was just, here's how you write a contract, go figure out the rest. And I was just so awkward. Like, first of all, I didn't do a final walkthrough inspection with them because I didn't know I had to have one. And so after everything closed, there was a few things wrong with the house. And they were like, hey, shouldn't we have picked this up? And I was like,
yeah, right.
So that didn't work out so well. And then it was just like my team leader wanted us to do these paintings for the closing gift. It wasn't ready in time for the closing, so I had to bring it back later. It was just a whole awkward, very obvious that I didn't know what I was doing kind of situation. So I don't blame them for not using me 3 years later to sell. But yeah.
That's the one that sticks with you, and I can understand that. But it kind of goes back to one of the bigger things that I often talk about on the podcast is the need for a mentor, or whether some people join a team, some people have a mentor. And it sounds like you didn't get the best version of that in the beginning. And that's why it's one of the things that's so important. Now, in the beginning, were you like working with a lot of renters? Did they start off on the lead as like, oh, we're going to rent, and then you convert it to be a buyer? Or was it everybody just like, yeah, we want to buy, and that was it?
A lot of the people that came through the lead generation program that we used were renters.
Okay.
And I didn't really convert them to being buyers. Try not to pressure people like that. But later on, a lot of those renters bought. So a year or two later, or I did a little bit of property management in the beginning with Remax. So that helped me just meet more people to get more actual buyers and sellers.
But it goes back to, if you didn't stay in front of them correctly, then they may have gone elsewhere, because that happens all the time. So that's one of the bigger things. Now, when you look back on it, if we had 100 new agents here and we were going over best practices and some tips that you highly recommend, what would be one thing you would tell them that your first year and have a successful year? What would you recommend to the agents?
So there's a fine line between keeping in touch with your people and looking like you're doing it to be salesy. I have a lot of clients that post things on Facebook and I respond to it, have parties, I'll go to them, things like that. But I never want them to feel like I'm just doing it for more business. So it's hard because you don't want to go in there and not have everyone know that you're a realtor, but you also don't want to just say it like that's the whole reason you're there. It's really important to make your clients, because it's really important to be genuine and actually care about them for the purpose of getting business from them, because people see right through that.
That's a good point. So making sure that the personable side, not just the real estate side, comes through when you're going to events or meeting with people and things like that. That's a good one. Certainly is a fine line. If you're full sales all the time, then that's not a great look. I'm thinking of like a wedding crasher scene at the funeral or something like that. Not the way to do it. One way that will lose you clients. When you look back on it now, like what are some of the things that maybe newer agents don't pick up on in the beginning that you would be like, hey, if I'm mentoring this group, these are some of the things you need to know in the beginning to have a more successful first year?
Gosh, I would just say you definitely have to take an interest in all of your clients, even if they're not really the type of people that you would maybe be friends with. Like, so for example, if I have a client that's really into video games or something and I hate that stuff, I'm not going to obviously make fun of them or act like they're an idiot because they're into something that I'm not. So we had to find a way to connect with people, and that will help you keep a relationship with them in future years.
The connection point, a great thing that people need to focus on. I mean, it's whether it's you find those common things you have right off the bat so you can kind of move them in the right direction, and especially when you're working a lead. I mean, whatever you said in the beginning to get them on the phone to give you a shot, there had to have been some connection piece that allowed you to have that opportunity, because if you don't, then they're just going to move on to the next one and you're just like a commodity, no different than everybody else. So that's important. So I always like to ask this question. One of my favorite questions is like a bold move, right? Because a lot of times in this business, you have opportunities to do something, and sometimes you do it, you take advantage of it, and sometimes you don't. But can you think of a bold move that you've made in the last couple of years or in that first year that resulted in a transaction for you that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I mean, all I can really think of is like, so yes, we're helping buyers and sellers negotiate with each other, but we're also kind of negotiating with other agents too. So I had one recently where the house had been in the market for 4 weeks. We put in an offer, and now all of a sudden they're calling for highest and best by Wednesday. I tell the buyer, this is what I've been told. And of course they get all panicky and they want to put in a higher offer. And I'm just like, yeah, don't. I think yours was strong. And I think they're kind of bluffing just to get you to come up. And it turned out they were, and we got it. We just got it days later. And so they were like, oh, thank you so much. We were about to put $10,000 more. We didn't need to do that. Yeah. Because sometimes you have to be able to read people. And that was the situation that was happening there. So I don't know if that's a bold move, but I kind of advised them not to put all their cards on the table because they didn't have to.
You protected the client because at the end of the day, that seems pretty shady to be like highest and best. But yeah, that would imply that you have multiple offers and you didn't. So good on you for kind of calling BS on that and then helping the clients. All right. When we come back, I want to talk about kind of like where you're at in business now and your pillars of business and how you're kind of getting new clients, staying in front of clients. So we'll be right back with Kristen Boyd. Hey everybody, it's Tanner Mulvihill with Bayfield Home Loans. Well, 2023 is here, and if you haven't done so yet, it's time to take a good long look in the mirror and ask yourself an honest question. Is your loan officer helping you succeed? For example, are they bringing you new marketing ideas? Do they actively try to generate referrals from the clients you send to them? Or even better, are they sending you business? My philosophy is business should be a two-way street, and I do my best to make it that way. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please give me a call or shoot me a text to 540-850-6267. Let's get together for coffee. Once again, that number is 540-850-6267. Talk to you soon. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Kristen, let's talk about kind of your pillars of business right now. So, a pie chart up in front of you. How does that break down for you as far as like, okay, I get 10% from this and 50% from over here? What does that look like for you?
So probably about 80% of my business is referrals from past clients. Now, probably like 70. And then the other 30 is the actual past clients that are selling or buying more investment properties or things like that.
Okay.
So Own Real Estate doesn't do property management. So I had to get my broker's license so that I could do property management with another brokerage.
Okay.
And so I've just started doing that again as of, I think, December. And that's taken off really quickly. You know, no one really likes property management. It's a pain, but I do it because it helps me get in front of more people. So obviously these tenants might buy someday, the owners, whether if they're working with another agent, I never try to take them away from that other agent to sell their property. But some of these owners are not working with another agent. They'll be selling. So I anticipate that this will be another pillar for me next year.
Nice.
But since I'm just now, you know, only 7 months into it or so, it's just more of a headache right now. I'm getting it. But I think it will pay off. It's just right now. But
you have at least the track record that you could see it when in your previous stops when you're doing the property management. Right. So it's like, yes, this is the hard part now to get through it, but here's how I can benefit from it down the road. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. So how are you staying in front of the past clients to then get them to be able to refer business to you? There must be a way, a trigger that you're using for them to do that.
So there's lots of things that I do. I know a lot of agents send like mailers saying just some random credit repair, things like that. I don't do things like that. For me, I don't feel like it's very personal. I always comment on Facebook things. I have conversations. I don't have a certain number of people that I have to talk to every day, but on the first of the month, I do send out a letter, a comparable report for everybody that bought their house in that month in a previous year, like a happy house ownership, but with the comparable report, just so that they know what their house is worth. And it's like no pressure to sell. I think the card says something like wishing you many more years in your house. So I do that on the first of the month. And then I also send birthday cards to all my clients that I have birthdays for. All of my clients should be getting about 3 things from me a year. So say a married couple, they're getting 2 birthday cards. They're getting their home anniversary card. So that's 3 pieces of mail a year. So 1 every 4 months. It doesn't really work out that way, but that. And then I do client events. I need to do more. I do it once a year in October, like a farm thing. That's been really good. And mostly I really try to keep in touch with everyone. So I don't make it weird, like a random phone call from your realtor, because then it's awkward and they don't know what to talk about. But when we have something in common to talk about, a lot through social media, I really try to engage with them that way.
That's a great point. And I like the idea, though, of giving them an update on the value, because everybody likes that, especially if it's like, oh, well, we bought this a year ago for $400 and it's worth $430 right now. Well, that was a good investment. And then down the road, and if you've been renting, that's not going to happen. So one way to look at it there. Now, do you have kind of like a schedule that you set per week on the weekly? Do you go, okay, like my Tuesdays are this, my Wednesdays this, and then weekends are showings and all that stuff? How do you kind of set your schedule?
So first and foremost, I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. My life is kind of chaotic. And then also I feel like a mom to all of these property management accounts that I'm taking care of all their maintenance things and all this kind of thing and my buyers. And so really it's kind of, I always start the day with a schedule, but by the end of the day, it's triage and trying to just get everything done on my to-do list. But yeah, I mean, I try to have in the mornings, I get all my paperwork done usually before 9 o'clock in the morning. And then at 9 o'clock in the morning, when it's appropriate to talk to people, then I schedule showings and that sort of thing. And then the afternoons, it just depends on what's going on with my family and what else we need to do.
What are some of your like regular go-to apps that you use to do your job? Basically, what are some of your go-tos that you use?
Well, obviously Rain. Not a big fan of HomeSnap. I just realized yesterday that I've been paying $40 a month for like 3 years and I didn't even realize my credit card. I was like, I don't know if that's worth it. I use Road Warrior. That kind of helps you map out your showings and things like that. So things that make the most sense. I think there's a charge for it. I don't remember how much it is, $10 a month or something like that. And I like that one too, because when we do pop-by gifts to our clients, it really helps you do the most efficient route. Yeah. I mean, that's it as far as apps. Obviously a lot of Amazon.
One I've started doing is crumble cookies, sending them to people. Like they can either be delivered or you can have them mailed. But kind of like an after settlement. Hey, thanks again for the opportunity to work with you. And I do my coffee mug with a picture of their house on it. My thing is like, since I have clients all over the state, I can't necessarily go drop something off in Herndon or Fredericksburg or Virginia Beach. Right. So it's like, okay, I'll just mail it out. And that's what I've been doing. But
so Cheryl's Cookies used to do this thing where you can send like a $5 one cookie in a box for all of my clients on their birthdays instead of sending them a card with a Starbucks gift card or whatever. But they stopped doing that. So maybe I'll look into that.
There you go. Well, one question I got for you, a lot of agents right now are struggling. Like, what are some of the stress points for you in the business right now? And how are you kind of overcoming them?
Well, honestly, I have been very fortunate because I have clients that refer me often. And I would say there's maybe 5 to 10 clients that refer me twice a year.
Nice.
So I'm not actually struggling with that. I really don't even know what advice to give. Really just have to build your referral base.
Gotcha. Now, what about just the other sides of it, as far as anything maybe you had difficulties with in the beginning that you've kind of overcome on the stressful side, or been pretty smooth sailing? So once you kind of got through the initial rough part, it just took it from there.
Yeah, well, the initial part was definitely rough because I had anxiety about cold calling and talking to strangers that don't want to talk to you, because that was awful. And that's why working by referral, I think you're great. So you don't have to prove yourself by being great. You just be yourself and do your job instead of the referral that you have really means a lot.
Getting over the cold calling takes a lot, that's for sure. And I guess from my standpoint, a lot of times you just have to remember it's not like they can come through the phone and leave reviews up for you on Facebook. If they hang up on you, they hang up on you and move on to the next one and take it from there. So that's the way I look at it. But when we come back, I want to talk about kind of database management and client focus on how some of the events that you've done in the past and what you found to be successful. So be right back with Kristen Boyd.
Tanner Mulvihill, NMLS number 276814.
Well, welcome back, everyone. So you mentioned that you've done some client events. Tell me about the last one and kind of some tips and tactics you learned from it.
The last one was Hunt Club Farm. It was more of a family-focused one. I had a pretty good turnout. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go back to that farm or another one this year. We just sent out paper invitations, because I think if you put it on Facebook, it just kind of gets lost and people forget about it. So we sent out paper invitations and did feeding the animals. And I think there was pony rides. And it's funny because I actually do not like animals at all. Like I didn't even go in. I just talked to everybody else, but families like that kind of stuff. So.
Okay. I like the fact that you did the paper invitation because like you said, Facebook just drowns in the noise. Now, did you follow up with a phone call to make sure they came? How did you know like how many people were going to show up?
They did RSVP. And then the week before I sent out a reminder. I think it was the week before or maybe a few days before. But yeah, everyone that RSVP'd ended up coming. I think we had like 50-ish.
Wow. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. What are some of the other ways that you mentioned? Like we do the mailer. Do you do a lot of the social posts? How do you feel about after closing gifts? Do you do anything like that for the clients?
So I do a closing gift and I try to make it something personal to the client. We also do these pop-by gifts. So like at least every 6 months, I'll stop by and bring something and drop it off at their door and have a chat with them and that sort of thing. Now, if it's a client that I know is kind of far out and I'm not going to be doing that pop-by thing, I'll set them up with maybe like I've done BarkBox subscription. That's like a 6-month or a year, 1 year that they're getting something from you every other month. And yeah, it's kind of expensive, but would you rather do that or would you rather drive to, Zunai to drop off a gift? I'm not doing that. I know I'm not going to do that. They're just going to get overlooked because they're so far away. So I'll just do subscription boxes like that.
It's a smart play. I mean, at the end of the day, too, because especially if it's a referral source that turns out to send you a good amount of business, like small price to pay for a great referral source. I always like to end the podcast on a story of funny, scary, or just something industry related on the story. So tell me a little bit about the transaction you were telling me about while we're offline.
Yeah, I had a client a few years ago that bought a house sight unseen in a not so nice neighborhood. And when they got here, there were actually squatters living in the house.
Oh my.
It was a new construction house. The windows were broken. There were squatters living in it. So they got rid of the squatters and they reluctantly moved in. But when the husband went on deployment, she was just terrified. There were shootings on her street. People would knock on her door and ask for money and that sort of thing. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I ended up finding them a rental for a year. And then we tried to sell that house, but no one would buy it. So I ended up renting that out as a property management account. A bunch of military guys who felt safe, and that's great. So they were fine for a year. And then the woman and her husband ended up buying another house, which I now manage as a rental property. And we were able to sell that first one. So, I mean, I'm happy that I was able to help them get out of that situation. And it's really unfortunate that realtors can't give a full picture of the neighborhood sometimes. And I've been on that side of things too, and at some point, if you warn them to check the crime rates, check the neighborhood maps, check all these schools and things like that, and they say, okay, we're fine with all that. At some point, you have to throw your hands up and say, okay.
Did everything I could. I've given my 2 cents and I've checked the box to make sure that you understand that where you're going.
Right.
So, and that's, I think as more and more sight unseens are part of the way people buy houses, because it didn't used to be that way 10 years ago. It's such a big deal now. You got to protect yourself. So you did everything you could. And I'm glad you were able to get the house sold. And lesson learned for people, though, that make sure you're directing them to the crime websites or wherever else to make sure they have a full scope of what they're getting into.
Yeah, I try to walk down the street with them. We do video tours and things like that. The thing with me is that since most of my clients are referrals, even if they're sight unseen, they usually have someone who lives here. So they'll come with me or they'll say, hey, no, don't do that. And it's not completely on me. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good one to end on. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. It was a pleasure having you, and congratulations on all your success, and just looking forward to see where it goes from there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Well, that's it for this episode of the Virginia is for Realtors podcast. If you're a realtor looking for a loan officer you can count on to follow up with the leads you send, keep you updated on the transaction every step of the way, and get you to the closing table on time, give me a call. I'd love the opportunity to sit down with you for coffee to learn more about your business and how we can make it even better. Until next time, this is Tanner Mulvihill on the Virginia is for Realtors podcast.